get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Richard Walker of QuikForms.com. Rich, I'm going to introduce you formally in a second, but I always like to mention other episodes people should check out. And since you have an amazing SaaS company, I'll mention some other SaaS interviews I did. I did one with the founder of Help Scout, and I did one with the founder of CartHook, which helps with Shopify, and also with Respana. All great episodes. So check out those and many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that, Rich? Well, we help you run your podcast. We're an easy button to help launch and run your podcast. And we also are big proponents on strategy, accountability, and the whole execution. But the number one thing in my life, Rich, is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. I found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and companies I most admire and feature them and what they're doing. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. And I am super excited. We have Richard Walker, founder and CEO of QuikForms.com. He started Quik in 2002 to help people spend less time on paperwork and more time on what they do best. And their mission is to streamline the customer experience with forms, automations, and solutions for you. So check out QuikForms.com. He has started 10 companies since the age of 12, published 2 books, and the most impressive, Rich, is really father to 3 boys, because those are like major startups, and each child is a ton of work. And prior to Quik, Richard was a financial advisor and was a consultant with Arthur Andersen. So, Rich, thanks for joining me.
Hey, pleasure to be here. And you're right. I think my 3 boys are one of my proudest achievements. And my sister gave me a shirt when I had 2 boys that said, "You can't scare me. I have 2 boys." And now I have to get a shirt that says I have 3 boys.
How old are they? No.
They are 1, 4, and 7. So I'm still in the thick of it.
Wow. That's amazing. So we'll have to talk about how do you run the company and balance family life too. But first start off with QuikForms and give a little bit of overview of what you do.
Yeah, so it actually starts way back, 20 plus years ago when I became a financial advisor. I worked really hard to earn the trust and respect of my client. And the reward was I got to open their account. But the real reward was I got to handwrite their paperwork. And I thought, man, this is dumb. Who likes filling out paperwork? So I built software that fills out my forms and applications for various mutual funds, life insurance, annuity, brokerage. And we've actually gone out to the industry. We built a library of over 38,000 forms. We build them all the exact same way with the same field definition. And then we provide software solutions so that our customers can find the forms easily, bundle them together, pre-fill them with data from the data they already have, sign them with partners like DocuSign and Signex, and process their paperwork really efficiently.
Who are ideal customers?
That's a great question. We see a lot of different types of forms automation out there. If you're building a website, you go to forms.com or Wufoo or things like that. But where we shine is when customers have static, repetitive forms. So think paper-based forms that they cannot change the content, whether that's because they get them from third parties like US government, or they design them themselves for legal and compliance, yet they still need to be able to automate the filling of them, the processing, the validation, et cetera. So we work best when people have 10 or more forms and they're repetitive in nature. And just put a finer point on it, we can do any form in the world, but we tend to attract customers that are trying to automate their revenue generating activities.
So let's talk about a few examples, because I know I can see this applying to wealth management, financial, law firms. Let's just take each of those for a second. And what would be an example of a use case? So like wealth management and financial, What are some use cases you've seen?
Yeah, actually, one of the hottest segments of our market right now is the RIA space, Registered Investment Advisor. And if you're not in the wealth management space, you'd probably recognize names like Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade or Fidelity Investments. And these firms are custodians where a registered investment advisor will custody the assets of their clients. So the advisor is providing advice. They're putting the assets with somebody like Schwab. And guess what has to happen? They have to fill out paperwork to make all that, transfer the assets, open the accounts, et cetera. So what happens is an advisor who's working with lots of clients, the average advisor has 100 clients, 350 accounts or so. They're generating a lot of different types of forms over the cycle of a year. And they have a challenge to keep up with that paperwork. Not only do they have to fill it out, but they have to have the correct version of the document at all times. And while companies like Schwab are very tech advanced and they're providing a lot of solutions, it's not always enough. And so a company like mine can step in and help fulfill some of the gaps in the paperwork process.
So that's the example of the RIA. What about some other spaces?
Yeah, we have a customer that's in healthcare. If you went to the hospital and you got transferred over to another hospital, for example, they have a kiosk that they use with forms from our system to fill out the data coming from the ER to, say, an acute recovery center. Another great example is we have a partner in the immigration law space. So if you're not from America, you probably don't realize there's over 200 forms related to immigrating to the US. And their company is actually like the 5th largest user of our product in terms of forms volume. They're a software company, which is a great partner for us. And they're out selling to their clients and using our technology in the background to make forms part of their workflow and their business model. So that to us is like the ideal type of partnership that helps us move into more industries, which is one of our goals.
We'll talk about partners for a second, but I know, which I could speak from personal experience, and I hate to say this, but like I've had vendors send me a PDF to fill out, and I just didn't work with that company because it was so cumbersome. I'm like, forget it. I gave up. So I totally get the pain point, and the pain point of someone using yours. I probably am like, oh, this is super easy. I had to like download it, then I had to fill it. It's just a pain in the butt, So I get it.
And we make that so much easier. My complaint about a PDF, well, and PDF's a powerful tool, obviously, but my complaint is if it's on a computer, if you don't have an Adobe Acrobat paid product, you can't save it. And even on a Mac or an iPad, which is super popular these days, you can't even fill it out without another tool. So when you tell a customer, hey, you've got to go get a tool in order to do business with us on our website, that's just counterintuitive to a good experience, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things we enable our customers to do is put an HTML-based form that looks and feels like their actual document out on their website, free, no software to use other than your web browser. Fill it out, sign it, submit it, print it if you want to keep a copy, all those things. I just don't know why Adobe didn't do this a long time ago. They should have.
I mean, that's exactly when I talked about your mission of streamlining the customer experience. That's exactly what turned me away from this particular company by sending me a PDF. Like, you're making me do more. I just want to make it easy for me, to do business with you, Yeah,
you didn't want to, let's see, save it, reattach it or print it, scan it. Come on, right?
I don't even like using a print. I mean, I don't even like using a printer. I should be able to fill it out online, in my opinion, right? And that's what you help people do. I want to talk about 2 topics. One, partners, and then you mentioned the customer experience, right? So talk a little bit about how you think about the customer experience, because it kind of led you to forming this company.
Oh, it absolutely did. I hated filling out forms. And in 2001, I'm thinking, it's the year 2001, people. Why are we doing this? And, ironically, before I worked at Arthur Andersen, I was actually in financial services. I worked at John Hancock. I worked at Payne Weber and Transamerica. And I learned that the financial industry is just always behind on technology. So it wasn't that big a surprise to me when that happened. But yeah, I mean, look, I think I'm inherently lazy. I want a computer to do the work for me. And when I can make it do that work, I'll have it do it. And I think that plays into the customer experience. Customers have become accustomed now to electronic signature. You do it at the grocery store. They're accustomed to scanning, complex barcodes. They watch UPS do it all the time. And that required no collection of data by the UPS driver. It doesn't have to ask for anything. It's just like scan a code, let's go. We're used to a lot of automation as consumers these days. So why is it you go through all of the stress and pain of trying to figure out your financial situation? Like doing life insurance is a pretty tricky thing because you're talking about your death, and people don't like talking about death. And you get to a buying decision. You're like, yes, I'm ready to buy this life insurance contract that you're recommending. And then the agent says, okay, here's 75 pages to fill out. Like, what? And Jeremy, I'm sure you've bought a house. You probably feel the same. You're in love with the house. You're so excited. And what's the last step? A ream of paper that you have to go through for 2 hours.
Do you help real estate? That's exact. I mean, that was a conversation I had. I remember signing the paper. I go, you just killed like 1,000 trees. Like, do you not have a digital way of doing this? Do you tend to help any like title companies or real estate companies, or not yet?
No, it's a complex question because number one, in order for us to take our software and make it valuable, we have to have the forms that you want. And so to go into real estate, think about how many different mortgage, title, escrow, and states there are, how many forms we'd have to collect just to enter that space. And second, there's already a competitor in that space, and they have a pretty good barrier to entry. And I have the exact same barrier to entry in financial services. Nobody's going to go build a 38,000 form library just to start competing with us. So no, I would be happy to work with Bank of America on their internal forms or any company like that, but that hasn't been the case yet.
Yeah, you're busy enough with the wealth management, financial, and the law space. It sounds like,
for sure.
Yeah. But I'm sure I talk about. Is there a temptation? Do you get those temptations? Because I'm sure you get inquiries all the time. Like, can you help me? Right? And how do you decide? When have you decided to, yes, we can do this, or no? You know what? Like in the case of the real estate, we're not going to go there.
So I make a pretty clear distinction, and I think one thing that helps play this out is think about Netflix as an example. I think most people view Netflix as an incredible library of videos, TV shows, movies, et cetera, that you can watch, right? I don't think about it that way. I think of it as an incredible technology platform that happens to have the content I want to watch. But what it means to you is if you want to watch Game of Thrones, which is an HBO show, you're not going to find it on Netflix. And that renders the Netflix technology worthless to you for that show, right? So in a way, our technology is only as good as the library of forms that we offer, which is why we've built such a great name in the wealth management space. However, unlike Netflix, we offer our technology regardless of the library. In other words, if you're General Motors, if you're Kraft Foods, if you're XYZ company, and you have a library of forms to give us the library, we will build it custom for you, private to you, and our technology works beautifully. We actually have a strategy going into this coming next 6 to 12 months to retool our interface of our software, just tweak it enough to be more open to other industries because, hey, a form is a form. Already with current clients in wealth management, we will do their HR forms. It doesn't matter to us. A form is a form. We can make it work. But generally speaking, people know us in the wealth management space, which is why most of our business is there.
Talk about some of the new features you are thinking of coming out with now or in the future.
Yeah, one of the key things that people deal with forms is they often have to fill out more than one at a time. I mean, it's one thing, if I was your advisor, Jeremy, and I said, hey, let's work with you on your financial setup, I would guess you have a wife, maybe kids, you probably have complex situations, maybe you have some trusts, estate plans. Well, there's not just one account in play here. So if I want to work with you to roll over your individual account, your wife's individual account, your joint account, your 2 beneficiary accounts for your kids, we're talking 5 accounts now. So one of the things we're working on right now, it should be released in the next month or 2, is duplicate forms. If I need to transfer 3 accounts into one, I would need 3 account transfer forms. Another thing we're working on is what we refer to as householding your 5 accounts all in one package, all for one signature event. Though that doesn't have to just be a household of people. It could just be like accounts. And the third thing we're working on, which is all playing in together, is the idea of batch forms. So imagine you took your company to a new advisor and said, yeah, we're going to form a new 401k. And if you have 50 employees, that's 50 applications that have to be filled out. our technology will enable you to say, here's a Excel file, those 50 employee names and basic info, fill out 50 forms for you and send them off to each of those 50 employees as applicants so that that paperwork can be streamlined. It's really frustrating to me when we did our 401k or we did our health plan earlier this year that our agent's like, okay, everybody, here's a piece of paper. I mean, we almost want to fire them, but we can't get them to change because our choices are limited. There's not that many healthcare providers out there and we have to do what they do, but we could automate that. And so that's what we're working on.
I know that some of your feature sets are popular in the Salesforce environment.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
We in 2011 we took on our first resale partner, DocuPace, and from there we started growing that strategy of our business. A company called Science came along, and they brought us into the Salesforce world. And one of the things I love about partners, and Science has done such a good job with this, is that when I say to somebody, "Hey, I can give you an electronic form," that's interesting, right? You didn't want to fill out a PDF, and I gave it to you electronically. That's interesting. But what if I could give it to you within your business process? Well, that becomes powerful. And that's where somebody like Science comes into play. They have built the workflow, the user experience, the rules, the validation, the data integration, and they've used our technology in the background to create a customized white label type experience. So now they can offer Quik as part of a Salesforce install. And if you look at Salesforce, it's been rather fascinating. They're obviously a juggernaut of the CRM space. They have been moving further and further into wealth management, and they're winning more and more every day. And I'd say there's like two different types of customers. There are those who are sophisticated enough for Salesforce. They have an administrator, they have somebody who's willing to take on that role. And then there are those who are just focused on something that's super industry specific, like one of our other partners, Redtail. Redtail is a dominant player as well. They have a really great experience. But what we're seeing is more and more interest in the Salesforce world. And what we're finding is more and more frustration in the Salesforce world because it's this complex beast. There's so much you can do, but it requires a lot of in-depth knowledge and expertise to do it. So that's why our customers gravitate to somebody like Science. Well, the other proof in this is I have 3 new partners who are coming on board with us right now, and they're all Salesforce driven. Practify is the newest one, company out of Australia that has a very strong presence here in the US, and they're doing great. Another one called Arcus Partners. They've been around for a long time. They've done a lot of custom dev, but they have this great platform. And the third one is a Canadian company coming into the US called Nest Wealth. They're building their entire platform on Salesforce. So I think when you think about the forms problem, inevitably you think about the CRM problem. Where's your data being stored? Where's it coming from so that you can make more use of that data? And I'm seeing more and more Salesforce installs.
Let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, this sounds great. I'd like to hear more about how do you typically work with a reseller? Someone's interested. How do you explain to them, this is how we work together?
I would love other people's feedback on this because I don't know how others do it, but my whole approach has been, we can't go to market together if this doesn't work for both of us. I know it sounds a lot like win-win, and that's not really what I'm after. What I'm thinking is, what is your business model? So if Jeremy, your company was providing software, how do you make money? If you're selling a per seat license, then that's a model I need to help you adopt, because I can't come to you and say, hey, you're going to pay a site license fee, $100,000 or something crazy, but you're charging $50 a month to your user, because it won't work for the customer. I need to be able to come in and say, hey, it's $10 a month on top of your 50 or some relevant number. If you're coming in with assets under management as your fee structure, how do I play with that? And so the first conversation I say is, what is the business model and what are you trying to drive for? What I have found is what most partners want is the ability to sell more of their own software. They're not necessarily trying to resell my product because they think, oh, I can go sell that and make money. It's not like a typical store. It's more about, I need to provide more value to my customer. I need to improve my own customer experience and therefore attract and retain more of my own customers. So Quik becomes a value add. And I think one of the best parts is that we don't lose customers. I know that's a strong thing to say, but really it comes down to a couple of things. Quik.
Well, you're very sticky. I mean, if someone's using it in their process, it's very sticky, right?
Yeah, I think of it like a utility company. How long would it take you to put electricity back on if it went off? I mean, you'll pay whatever it takes. And that's the same thing with forms. Once you come off paper and you have a process that works, you won't leave it. And second, you're right. If you make the investment in a new CRM or a new workflow and process where forms are involved, typically you're going to live with that for the next 3, 5, or 7 years before you think about changing it. And I think the other thing is we do our job well, frankly. I mean, we keep the forms up to date. We keep adding more value into our product, and our partners reflect that with their solutions.
So when you're talking to a reseller, you'll have the conversation just to figure out how does their business work and does it make sense, and how you would integrate into, because they're not just reselling yours, they're basically putting it into their customer experience to make it better and easier. So you're wondering, what does the flow look like? Where would we plug in? Does it make sense?
Yeah, and there's a couple different models. I mentioned Skyence. They took our APIs and built a white label model. So everything is in their system. Their customer signs one contract. In contrast, Practify, which is one of our newer partners, they've done a single sign-on integration to our turnkey product called the Quik app. And that wasn't available to Skyence back in the day, but what that means to somebody like Practify is they can be up and running with an integration much faster, and they're not responsible for our user experience because that's what we focus all of our energy and time on. So they get to leverage our best of breed of what we're building and still give the customer a great experience to pull data from the CRM, ask questions, and then send it to Quik, get the forms, get them signed, get it back into the Practify system. So it can be end to end. And again, I always look at how are we benefiting the client? How is the client going to perceive this, and what are they willing to do to have this? And if they're not willing to have it or adopt it, what's the point of doing it?
You know, how did you, do you have the technical chops? Did you build this? Do you have a team? How did you, I mean, because there's a lot of moving pieces here.
Yeah. Yes, I'm very technical. And when it started, I built my own software. And it was interesting because in 2001, when I had this idea, I had never built commercial software. So the first version I built for myself as a financial advisor was Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Access, and using images and fields. It created the right result. But when people kept saying, Rich, I want this, I'm thinking, I can't give you a spreadsheet. That makes no sense. And how am I going to build the forms you want? When I really started thinking about turning it into a commercial product, I had to go train myself, and I'm very self-taught on how to build a commercial product. And what most people don't realize is back in 2001, your choice for where you got information for software development was the bookstore. I mean, I spent so many nights in Barnes and Noble and Borders and any bookstore that had these types of books I needed. You couldn't just go Google this stuff like you can today. But today, I've got what, 9 engineers, I've got 2 product managers, I've got QA, I've got, designer, et cetera. So I'm not doing as much code, but I got to be honest, Jeremy, I'm really in love with a new solution out there called OpenAI ChatGPT. And because I'm technical, I'm just playing with it like crazy and having it write code for me and all sorts of neat things to figure out what this AI world's going to bring us.
Very cool. I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned CRMs, and talk about how CRM and customer experience and Quik forms kind of come together.
Yeah, well, you think about the process that most people go through. If you're working with a prospect, and just keep it generic from a sales standpoint, what are you doing? You're asking that person for some information, name, phone number, email, probably. In a financial advisor's world, they're asking for all sorts of other information. Tell me about your assets, your net worth, your risk tolerance, those types of things. So in any kind of sales process, there's a data collection phase. And where does that data go? Well, if you're smart, you're putting it into an organized CRM where that CRM matches your business process and your flow. So you built rules, you built reminders and tasks, maybe templates, all sorts of things. So I would argue that most sales organizations live and die by their CRM, not just their calendar. The calendar is often integrated into it, and email's integrated to it. The CRM's the hub. And so if that's where you're focused and that's where your data is, that's where the forms have to interact from. Now, that's not the only place. We've had people adopt Quik with their accounting systems, with their back-end address books. I mean, data is data, right? But generally speaking, people start in the CRM because that's where they're spending their time managing the client events and data and messaging, et cetera. So what Quik does then, if you're using our turnkey product, we make it easy to go into that data source and pull data out. Just a few months ago, we released a Salesforce integration that allows you to read all the different fields related to your people in Salesforce, your contacts, and map them to fields in Quik. I mean, one of our secrets to our business is we've defined a definition of over 750,000 unique fields, which means you can really, really fill out a form. And if you have the data in custom fields in a Salesforce, we've enabled you to pull that out. So one of the ways we're making it easier for people is to get better data out of the system that they're already putting it into. What we also find is when you start filling out forms electronically, you now have incentive to put even better data into your CRM. So now your CRM becomes even more valuable and more powerful to you. Then if you look at partners, any of the partners I've named so far, they're actually building the workflows related to the business process. So new account opening is a really popular topic. And that's what like Practify is doing. They're asking questions about what you want to do to open the account, collecting that data into their CRM, and then using Quik to fill out the forms.
I want to show something for a second, Rich, and I want to hear how you got the domain Quik Forms, because I know when I was researching, I can go to Quik Forms, Quik Forms, but then I know that when we scheduled this, you put Quik Forms. I'm like, I didn't realize they actually own Quik, like the proper spelling, Quik Forms. And if you're watching the video, you can see I have the website up here, Quik Forms. So I'm sure there's an interesting story about, and you didn't start with their domain Quik Forms.
Yeah, when you start a company, you always try to come up with a company name and a product name. And our company name is actually Efficient Technology, Inc. We formed that in 1999. That was before I had this product idea. When I came up with Quik, I was going to call it Auto Forms, but that sounds like automotive. And then I was going to call it Rep Forms, like representative. And I'm like, well, that's too specific. We went through 9 or 10 names. And finally I said, Quik, that'll work. We'll put an exclamation mark on it. We'll misspell it. That way I can get the brand, I can get the domain. I could not get the proper spelling of Quik, quikforms.com as a domain. It was owned by a company that did legal software, and they were using it to represent a product they offered, which was filling out a form of some type in legal worlds or custom generated documents, maybe prior to Zoom. I watched them forever. And I contacted them when I saw them just kind of get stale. They stopped referring to the domain. And I contacted them and said, hey, I'd really like to own your domain. And it turned out their partnerships were having a falling out. They were changing their structure, their focus, whatever. And so they were open to it. And I think we got it for a very, very fair price. And it took us, I think it was like year 14 of our business when we finally got it. Prior to that, I always had to tell people the correct spelling. Every time I talked to them, go to Quik, no letter C. And it was really annoying. Now I can just say, go to quikforms.com, and it doesn't matter how you spell it.
I love it. Was it a tough negotiation to get it?
Thankfully, no. I mean, honestly, I don't want to say the price out loud on here, but it was very reasonable. It took about 3 or 4 emails back and forth, maybe a phone call. They were really good people that we were talking to. Nice. Different than the guy who I knew who sold a vodka brand to Grey Goose. He had Grey Goose framing, like picture framing, and Grey Goose Vodka came to him and said, we need this. And I mean, talk about dealing with a big corporate entity with a big brand. They paid a lot of money, which I also won't say. So that was a tough one for him, but mine was easy.
On here, you're looking at, if you're watching the video, you can see quikforms.com. Talk about the decision on the free trial, the time period on the free trial. Right now, again, like when we're looking at this now, this may change in the future. I can't guarantee, but right now they have a 14-day free trial here. The decision on that, and then how do you decide on pricing?
Oh, wow. So pricing is one of my favorite topics. So first of all, the free trial, the earliest days of Quik, you could only buy it for a year. You couldn't buy it monthly. So you had to commit to a year. So we thought we'd give people a 30-day free trial. What we found was that's too long for people. They will log in the first day, forget about it, think, oh, I got 30 days, like no big deal. And lo and behold, 30 days would come and go and they didn't use the product. Then they'd call us and ask for an extension and we give them 2 weeks. And then they took action. Well, we did that for about 2 years and we finally said 2 weeks is what people really want. And so a 2-week trial is it. I mean, look, we're really good about helping people. If somebody tries it for 14 days and that's not enough time, they call us, we give them more time. No big deal. We make no issue of it. We don't put up roadblocks. So 14 days is kind of ideal for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, pricing. So pricing is a really interesting conversation. And I would argue as an entrepreneur of an innovative company, it's the hardest thing to figure out. And when we came to this product, this is our turnkey product called the Quik app. We had been selling API-based solutions for a very long time. And we offered different models with API. We can do it per user. We can do it based on how many forms you generate. And when we started looking at this pricing, we originally had 3 plans. We were thinking we'd have an entry-level plan that was low priced, a middle-of-the-road plan, which is currently called Premium. It was formerly called Advanced. And then the Premium product, which we never launched, the Premium. Enterprise, we can always do custom solutions for enterprise and even do custom features within the product. And I don't mean build new stuff, but turn on or off certain features as possible. But anyway, when you talk about pricing, what you're really thinking about is what is the value you're delivering and how do people compare that value? You can compare it to competitors. I'm fortunate. We have one direct competitor. So that's one comparison point, whereas CRMs, they have dozens or hundreds of comparison points. So one thing is comparable to your competitor if you're offering the same value. The second is perception of value and how do people perceive it? You might notice that we say these are prices if you're paying annually. And this is a very common thing you see in SaaS products. They try to help you see a monthly price, but you're going to pay an annual bill. To keep it simple, we said, if you pay monthly, it's $54 a month. But if you pay annually, you get 2 months free. So it's 10 times 54, and then divide that by 12, and you get to your 45 number. Truth is, this is for a single user license. And so here's a whole nother psychology part. How many people out there just want one single user? And so, and there are some out there, but most people want multiple users. So we immediately discount that at volume. And enterprise, the same thing. It's all volume based. But I think pricing is really tough because you have to try to understand what people are willing to pay and what they're willing to pay for. We modeled the company Slack as well as Netflix and about a dozen others that I can't remember the names of because they were on different websites. One of the things we liked about Slack, and I don't know if you know the Slack story, they went from 0 to 100 million users in 1 year. Like they were the fastest growing SaaS company in the world from what I've understood. One of the things they did exceptionally well is they are very clear on what you're going to pay for. So you can have a free version. This is how I remember signing up. You could get a free version that would not record more than 10,000 messages in your chats. But if you wanted more than that, you pay. Oh man, as soon as you've used it for a few months with your team and you hit that 10,000 threshold and you realize the value.
And you
like,
go back to look
I'll
at
pay.
something and you can't find it because it's not in. Yeah, exactly.
So one of our key differentiators between our two products, the Essential and the Premium, is e-signature. If you want to e-sign and you want to use DocuSign or Signex, you need the Premium product. We try to make that really, really clear so you assess value. We also offer the $25 a month product because if you're a small advisor firm, maybe a startup, maybe you've been in it for a few years, this may be good enough for you. We want to offer a really easy way to get into this that's affordable. How do you see it, Jeremy? I mean, you probably talked to dozens of companies about their pricing.
No, it's tough. I mean, I think you hit it on the head, which is, what's the value you provide, right? And the perception of value as well. And then what's the market look like, right? Because if someone, even if the value is whatever it is, and there's other quote unquote competitors, there's always going to be better feature sets and things like that. But if someone's charging $5 a month and someone's charging $1,000 a month, there's going to be a discrepancy there. Like, well, maybe I can just get away with the other one. So Yeah, I think how you put it, but ultimately, it's always interesting to me to hear how people put different feature sets in the different buckets, right? Because you could have been like, oh, we're just going to put this feature in the essential and this feature in premium, but listen, the next level, the smart companies are like, listen, this is going to get the job done. But if I really want these couple of features, I need to upgrade to the next level. And those companies, like, they've got it figured out. They know either usage wise or feature set wise. I like the companies like, the more like Slack is, you can use it, but if you're, you're a power user of it, you're going to be paying more, right? So
Yeah.
it makes sense that, allow, even if they charged a small amount, when if they charge a small amount in the beginning, for other feature sets, like, I don't know, 10,000, let's say you get 20,000, you could pay whatever, but it's always interesting with the usage wise. I've seen a lot of companies be successful with, okay, if you're a power user of it, it makes sense. You're going to be paying more.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned in the sales process is that when people say no to your price, they probably don't understand the value of your product, or they don't get the value. They don't need the value. And it's really fascinating talking to various customers when they talk about some of our partners. They'll say, we really like what they offer, but they do about 10 things more than we need them to do, and we're not willing to pay for that.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. So how do you lay that out in terms of product and features and functionality?
Yeah.
And we tried to just model what the best SaaS companies are doing out there in terms of layout and
like
UI,
when I look at this, what makes me think of is like, the way I would talk about this and sell this to someone is like saving time, which is their money. So I'm wondering, have you thought about putting, this, it's hard to say per person, but like this would probably save like an advisor 6 hours a month or whatever it is. And like, that's like you were saying, talking about the value, if their time is worth whatever, $100 an hour, or whatever it's worth, I don't know. But that's like, you're basically saving $1,000 a month by using this. I don't know. You were saying, the time saving.
So it's interesting because we did a time motion study early on, and we found the time that you spend to do things manually or just online with electronic forms versus Quik, we're going to save the average advisor $15,000 a year in labor costs. The problem is nobody believes us. And I don't mean they just totally discount it. I mean, they have no way to quantify it for themselves. And in part, they're thinking, I'm paying my staff person $20, $30, $40 an hour, no matter what, whether they fill out forms or not. So if I save them time, I don't really save $15,000. This is part of the feedback we've had on this. Enterprises, on the other hand, they look at it a little differently. They tend to think about, if I improve my customer experience, which goes all the way out to the end investor, I will probably speed up my transactions, which means I'm collecting money faster. I'm paying out commissions faster to my advisors too. But it also means I'm going to have more likely to complete signups of customers. I'm more likely to onboard them. Like DocuSign, a long time ago, they did a study and they found that if you don't sign a document within 24 hours of signing, of receiving it, there's a 75% chance you'll never sign. And within 3 days, a 96% chance. Well, I don't have the exact same data for opening an account, but I'll bet you if your advisor gave you the paperwork and you couldn't do it in 1 day, probably still a 75% chance you won't do it. And I think enterprises understand this. Gartner Group, Microsoft, other companies who've studied how people work, they realize that the companies who focus on a great customer experience are the ones that are actually driving the revenue of their business.
I have one last question for you, Richard. First of all, thank you. Thanks for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, and some things that you've worked on for over the past couple of decades. I'm curious, your favorite softwares. I can see you geek out on softwares. And two of my favorites are Text Expander and SaneBox. It reminded me because that conversation they will send me a monthly email and say, and again, I don't know how accurate it is or whatever, but they'll say, you saved, 52 hours this month by using SaneBox, and whether it's true or not or whatever, it makes me feel good about my purchase every month. And same text expander, same thing. It's one of those, you have a short code you could type in, I make a lot of introductions, so I could save Rich Walker, one word, and then that will spit out your bio. So when I want to introduce you, check out what they're doing at Quik, I could write Rich Walker, and it just gives me like a paragraph that I pre-wrote right there in an email. So I'm curious, your favorite softwares.
Oh man. So I think about what I use daily. I'm on Slack all day long with people, customers too. There's a product I use to take notes quite often, and it's a browser extension in Chrome. And I think it's called Notable, as in Knotable, I think. And it's super easy to just take notes in my browser when I'm talking to customers. I can sit here looking at the screen, but also type those notes about my customers. I played around with, and I love playing around with AIs. So I played around with one called Assembly. And I'm not really an adopter of it, but I do like their product. It's a note taker for Zoom. It just follows your meetings and starts taking notes for you and converts it all so you have a transcript. Then I took the transcript and I ran it through the OpenAI Chat GPT. And I said, remove speakers or summarize this into 5 bullet points. And it would just summarize it. It's amazing. So right now, I'm really enamored with the AIs out there. I've played with Copy AI, Paragraph AI. I tried Jasper AI. I chose Copy AI over Jasper.
Why?
Just for my own purposes, not because Jasper is a bad product. Jasper is a great product, but Pictory. Have you heard of Pictory AI?
Mm-mm.
It creates videos. It's unreal. Take a blog article, throw it into Pictory. It will source video clips and put a video together with highlight text. It's unreal what it can do. So I'm really, really interested in what this is. And I feel like in the AI world, we're at the first inning, or we're at the dawn of what is coming. And so now I'm really interested to figure out, how do I use this for forms? How do I use this for data collection? How do I use this with engaging with customers from a forms perspective? And I'm fairly certain we're going to have AI in our business in the next year somehow, in some way, even if it's just to help us answer questions faster. Sorry, Jeremy, not take too long, but I'm going to throw one idea at somebody, because I threw this at my own team. If you write knowledge-based articles for your customers to read on your website, run it through something like ChatGPT and say, summarize this. Give me 5 bullet points. And then take that summary and put it at the top of your article as a summary. And now you don't have to write the summary. Like, stupid little things like that just save time and make it better for your customer.
I love it. Rich, I'm the first one to thank you. Everyone check out quikforms.com, exactly how you spell it, exactly how it sounds, quikforms.com. Check out more episodes of inspiredinsider.com. And Rich, we could point people towards episodes of your podcast. So if you want to tell people the name, and they'll be able to find it on your website as well.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, our podcast is called The Customer Wins. And we're going to celebrate how customers win, how you found your first customer, how you attract your best customer, and really how you focus your company on developing the best customer experience that you can provide.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Jeremy, it's been a pleasure to be on your show today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.